Chase, I just want to backtrack a little bit. What were you doing? Where were you? What were you thinking the day that the Nick Saban news went down? And part B, what in the world was that like in the world of radio in the state of Alabama that day?
Yeah, so it was about 4 o'clock Central Time is when it came out. I actually set my phone aside to get something done and turned the phone on Do Not Disturb. When I finished what I was doing,
Oh,
about
man.
15 minutes later, is a phone full of texts, and the news had come out that he had retired. And so, yeah, I rarely ever do that, but I had put it away to get something done at that particular time, of course. But yeah, then the messages started flowing in, and you had to think, wow, is this real? Is this actually happening? And I was set to fill in on our morning show the next morning, so
Oh,
there we go. I had the whole 3 hours set. I knew what I was going to be talking about, and so yeah, it was a whirlwind, and I mean that's all anybody talked about.
yeah.
For the days after. Even if you weren't really a football fan, you were talking about it. So that really rocked the world of the folks here in the state of Alabama, and still to a point is, and I know we'll get into this year's team, but I mean, folks are still just wondering what is it going to be like, because we've spent the last 17 years in a Nick Saban at Alabama world. What does that look like afterwards? Well, we'll find out here shortly.
I think I said this when we had somebody else on, but I had a fun fact. One of my co-hosts would let me tweet it. He thought it would be taken as disrespectful and trolling, but Kalen DeBoer actually has a higher winning percentage as a college coach than Nick Saban.
Hey,
So I'd say Alabama did okay on the rebound there.
yes, they did, and I mean, he was to me the top target. Since Nick Saban announced his retirement, like you said, he's a winner. He gets the job done, and I've really been impressed with the guys he's able to bring in, with the staff he's been able to put together. So I think the guy's a winner. And a lot of folks, unless you keep up with college football, you probably haven't heard of Kalen DeBoer. But I think a lot of people are going to know his name from now on. And he's a younger guy. He's been around. He's won a lot, but he has a very bright future, and I think he's going to have a great future in Tuscaloosa.
Here's a good gauge. My son is 10, and Washington was kind of his adopted team because he liked the way that they played. He liked Michael Penix Jr. He liked the and just the way that they spread it out and went after it. That's a good gauge when you can get a 10-year-old's attention with your offense. I think that probably bodes well for the entertainment value of Alabama football.
It does. And to now have a guy who is an offensive mind. Alabama's used to having a defensive mind in Nick Saban. Now they've got an offensive mind. You mentioned Michael Penix and just the entertainment of the offense. Well, he's bringing that to Tuscaloosa now. So I think a lot of folks are going to be watching Alabama football to see what this offense looks like, to see more, high-flying football. And so I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for the state of Alabama and great for the university as well to have a guy who's just been in the national championship, but also the football mind and kind of the quarterback whisperer that he is.
Yeah, a lot has been made of new staff, maybe some new energy in the building. And look, by the way, just in case people misunderstood this, when I gave the stat about the record, I'm not saying they have upgraded his coach. Just because it's the South and you just never know where people are going to take your comments. But it is going to be different for sure than it was under Nick Saban. Tell us what that looks like.
Yeah, for the first time in 17 years, first of all, media is able to see some of spring practice. That was a rarity under Nick Saban, but media, I was not able to be there, but talked to some guys who were there, and just from what they said, it's like a whole new world out there. And I saw some of the videos that they were putting out and some of the stuff on social media. This staff is, obviously Nick Saban had a winning formula. He did everything the right way. He won games. He won national championships. So there's nothing wrong with the way he did things. But this is just different. And sometimes different is good. Sometimes change is good.
Yeah.
And I think this is good. The energy that this coaching staff is bringing, they've changed music up on the practice field. The players are getting hyped up during practice, and Kane Wommack, the defensive coordinator, came from South Alabama, and he's out there. He's
Yeah.
doing selfie videos on social media, at practice. Like it's a whole different energy that this new staff is bringing, which I think is really good for the team, for the university. But again, there's nothing wrong with the last 17 years, but this is just new and it's different. And I mean, I think that's what players like. We're in a day and age where entertainment value is high, and so these players want to have fun. And Kalen DeBoer and staff are allowing them to have fun, yet get better at football. So I think it's great. The energy that this staff is bringing, I think that's huge for Alabama right now. And if they want to continue to get guys there and playing on this team, it needs to be a good energy. And I think this staff has that down so far.
Chase, from a media standpoint, Nick Saban didn't really have to do much. He would do Pat McAfee and, I'm sure a few shows in state during the year, but just didn't have to. And I don't think did. Is it different with Kalen DeBoer?
Yeah, it is. He's out there. He wants to be out there. Again, the guy's following up Nick Saban. This is a
Yeah.
tough job. This is a tough job for anybody. But yeah, I've listened to several interviews with Kalen DeBoer, and he seems like a really likable guy. And the folks in the media that I've talked to who have talked to him, again, really like him, and just talk about how down to earth he is, and how enjoyable he is to have a conversation with. And nothing, again, Nick Saban was a winner. He's the greatest college football coach of all time, but you weren't having many personal conversations with him. That's
Yeah.
just not how he was wired. You talk about football, but a lot of guys say Coach DeBoer is just down to earth. He has, he has personal conversations. Like he's a really likable guy, and I think that's going to go a long way as well, especially in recruiting for the University of Alabama. So I think you will see a lot more media appearances from Kalen DeBoer. He wants to be out there. He wants fans to know him and like him before the season starts. And so I think you'll be seeing a lot of Kalen DeBoer from now all the way up until we kick things off in September.
Chase, the offensive line was a problem last year at times. Got better as the season went on, but go to the last play of the game at the end of the season, the bad snap, and I mean it just was not up to the standard, as a certain coach used to say. What's different about this offensive line this year? What is the competition in that unit like?
You're Alabama's not starting from ground zero with the offensive line. They have some guys coming back, but I think they're really trying to build some competition. There's a new offensive line coach, obviously the whole new staff, and he has been great in, like I mentioned, bringing energy, but really getting these guys focused on a competition. You've got to compete for your spot, and I think in the last few years, it's been these same guys every year who've been on the offensive line. I would use the word complacent with Alabama's offensive line. At times
Yeah.
they were good, at other times they were not. They struggled. And you mentioned the last play of that game in the Rose Bowl was not a textbook offensive line. That you're not going to use that as a teaching tool. So I think what they're doing now, that you've got Tyler Booker and Jaden Roberts back on the offensive line. The two guards, they've played great. I think those are two guys are going to be the anchors of the offensive line, and those are two really good anchors to this Alabama offensive line. Now the question is who's going to be around them, and that's where kind of the competition is. I think Roberts and Booker kind of have their positions. Those the right and left guard, they've got those. It's just finding these pieces around them. One guy that really stands out to me is James Brockermeyer.
Yeah.
He's a returner. I think and from the reports from practice and what we've heard from the coaching staff, he's had a good spring so far. He could be one of those guys that steps in. So he's a name to watch for on the offensive line. Also, a newcomer, Parker Brailsford. He transferred in from Washington, so he has been with Kalen DeBoer up with the Huskies. He's a newcomer, so he's a name to watch for as well. I think we could definitely see him on the offensive line in a starting role. But I think with a offensive-minded coach like Kalen DeBoer, he is going to have his eye on this offensive line. He's a quarterback guy. Nick Sheridan, offensive coordinator, he's a quarterback guy. He was a college quarterback. And so they're gonna do whatever it takes for this offensive line to be elite, to protect the quarterback whom they're going to be working with. I know we'll talk more quarterbacks later, but this offensive line, I feel like under this staff, is not going to be overlooked. There's going to be a lot of competition this spring, and this is going to be an elite offensive line moving forward, just based on the coaching staff and kind of what their focus is.
Yeah, before we go to defense, let's talk quarterback, because Jalen Milroe had a very interesting season last year, just got so much better as the season went on. They've got some depth behind him in Tyler Simpson, who is a guy that was a 5-star out of high school and very mobile, and just a guy that if he'd hit the portal would have had a lot of options. What does that competition look like? Are we just going to presume this is Milroe's job? And if it is, what's that look like for him in that offense?
I mean, you got to imagine that it is Jalen Milroe's job to lose. Now, Kalen DeBoer has been very adamant that he wants competition. He wants, whether it's Ty Simpson, Dylan Longren, or the Washington transfer Austin Mack, he wants those guys to compete with Milroe. He wants there to be competition. But in the end, I mean, you mentioned it, the improvement for Milroe last year from the start of the season to the end of the season was drastic improvement. And so, you got to imagine that in the offseason, he's just gotten better. And so we'll see. But this is a very important offseason, I think, for Jalen Milroe, based off the way he ended last year. And so impressed with him. But, I think it's his competition to lose. I mean, he was, finished top 10 Heisman votes. I mean, the guy really cranked it up towards middle into the season last year. And so I don't think there's a quarterback in the room right now that could have the starting job. Austin Mack's great. I think Ty Simpson, could be a decent Alabama quarterback. But right now, I see Jalen Milroe is the best in that room. Now, time will tell. You never know. I mean, a guy may have a really good spring, a really good summer, and really good fall camp. But Jalen Milroe, if he progresses in the offseason the way he did through last season, yeah, I think he'll be in the starting role, and I think he fits the offense very well. It's one of the reasons he stayed in Alabama. He could have gone elsewhere, but he stayed. He wanted to play for Kalen DeBoer and a guy who develops quarterbacks so well. And to now for Jalen Milroe to have a quarterback guy, whether it be Kalen DeBoer or offensive coordinator Nick Sheridan, who again was a college quarterback, to have those two guys at his disposal to help him, to teach him, to fine tune his game, I think that's going to be huge. And I think Jalen Milroe fits what Kalen DeBoer does so well. He's going to have to throw the ball more, which I think he's capable of, and I know that's going to be kind of a focus point on them this spring and through the summer, is to get his arm as best as it can be. But I think he does fit this offense well.
Chase, they lost some dudes on defense. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Dallas Turner, and Alabama's always got talent on defense, of course, but how does it look? I mean, I think from the name value of looking at some past Alabama teams, there aren't the household names like the Will Andersons and some guys that maybe we've seen in the past. That doesn't mean they're not any good, but it just, you look on paper, it's different than it's been.
It is. It's much different. And Kane Wommack brings a different style of defense. And so I think defense is going to be really fun to watch this year because they've brought some transfers in. Malachi Moore is a guy that they are really high on right now. And Kane Wommack was giving him a lot of praise in his media availability last week after spring practice, saying he's kind of that leader on defense that they've been looking for. You think of a guy like Will Anderson or Dallas Turner, and those guys were kind of the leaders, kind of the quarterbacks of the defense. That's Malachi Moore right now, from what they're saying. And so defensively, they're changing things up. They're going to be kind of bringing in some new positions. We're going to see more of that wolf backer, moving maybe a bandit in there. Outside linebackers are going to be really important in Coach Wommack's defense. And so maybe not what we're used to seeing on Alabama, on defense for Alabama, but I think it's a really good change. And from what Kane Wommack was saying, it's not a big learning curve for the players from what they're used to under Nick Saban. And so I think that's going to be good on defense for Alabama as well, with so many new guys that they're able to get this implemented now. And it's not hard to learn from what he's saying. And so I'm excited to see defense, especially under Kane Wommack, who is a great defensive mind. Spent time as defense coordinator at Indiana when Kalen DeBoer was there as offensive coordinator, has been the head coach at South Alabama. He's a high-level recruiter.
Yeah.
He's brought in some great guys on defense in the offseason. So I'm excited to see what this defense does, and they're going to be moving around a lot. In past years at Alabama, especially last year under Kevin Steele, it was kind of defense they changed formation during the game. It looked a little different. Nick Saban even said he had to spend more time coaching on defense last year than he has in years past, just because they couldn't quite get what they needed to do done. And but I think you have a guy that could lead the defense so well right now in Kane Wommack. It wouldn't surprise me if he is not in Tuscaloosa very long, because he is a very sharp defensive mind. He's a very smart football mind, and so I'm really impressed with already what I'm hearing about this defense.
Yeah, I thought that was a coup. He had done a great job as a head coach at South Alabama. The Sun Belts are really good, probably the best non-Power 5 league out there for football. His dad, of course, was a defensive coordinator at Ole Miss. And I mean, now you've got a guy who's a head coach who's offensive minded and also a head coach running the defense. And I think that's not a bad plan going forward from Nick. I mean, there is no plan from Nick Saban, right? There's never going to be, but that's not a bad way to go about it.
It is not. And you mentioned his dad being the defense coordinator there at Ole Miss. He kind of created this 4-2-5 defense, which is what Kane Wommack uses. So it's been around a while, and they've been able to tweak it and really make it work. And so I think it's going to be really good for Alabama to implement this defense.
Chase, any parting thoughts on Alabama? I know we hit a lot of topics. Any spring storylines or program notes that are worth discussion that we didn't get to?
I think it's important for Alabama fans to be excited and to be patient as this builds back up. Alabama's going to remain a top level football program. There's no doubt about that. I'm excited to see what A-Day is like, to see these fans welcome in Coach DeBoer. And I think it's important to be patient now as he takes over. May change some things up than what you're used to from the last 17 years. But to be excited about the future of Alabama football, because I think it's great. It's in great hands with Kalen DeBoer and staff.
Chase, thanks for joining us. We'll have you on hopefully again soon. More Alabama football to talk. There's always Alabama football to talk about. Right. And I think we're going to have you on to talk some Auburn too. You're very dialed in that state. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris.
All right. I'm Chris Lee. This is Southeastern 14 presented by Bet Online.